All right. Well, let's get started. Welcome, everybody. My name is Mike Burrell. I'm the Atlas coordinator, and I'm joined tonight by Keelan Bumelis, the project manager for the Atlas with Birds Canada. You are hopefully in the right place. You're at an Atlas Sappy Hour. Tonight, we're going to be doing our Sappy Hour all about point counts. So what is a sappy hour? A sappy hour is a bit of a play on the words between happy hour and our logo, our mascot, Sammy the Sapsucker. It gives us a chance to discuss particular topics that are relevant for the time of year. So point counts very relevant. We're coming up to point count season in Southern Ontario in a couple days. It's not just about the topic, though. We want to give people a chance to ask general Atlas questions. So it doesn't have to be about the topic we're covering, point counts tonight. You can ask any of your Atlas questions at the end of the presentations. Um, just to give you your bearings, some of you may be joining us on Facebook Live. That's great. Others are on Zoom. If you're on Zoom, we ask that you ask your questions in the Q&A down at the bottom of your screen. You can use the chat for any technical issues or things like that, or just to chat amongst yourselves. So that's fine. And if you're on Facebook and you have questions, make sure you get them in the Facebook comments, so we'll know to answer them at the end of the presentation. Um, yeah, we don't have any guest speakers tonight. It's Kaylin and I. We're gonna cover off the point count topic. So the next thing I want to do is have a land acknowledgement. So we want to start. We like to start our Sappy hours with our land acknowledgement. Although we're joining from all over Ontario, maybe even further afield than Ontario, we're all situated on Indigenous treaty lands and traditional territories. I'm currently in the Peterborough area, which is located on the Treaty 20 Michisaugig territory and in the traditional territory of the Michisaugig and Chippewa nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations. That includes the Curve Lake, Hiawatha, Alderville, Scugog Island, Rama, Beausoleil, and Georgina Island First Nations. Since Atlas 3 is a province-wide initiative, there are many diverse Indigenous communities, territories, and treaty lands where we live, work, and undertake our atlasing. As atlasers and birders, we have a strong connection to the land. We see daily changes happening this time of year more than others, maybe. But we also see those changes that are happening over longer periods of times over the course of our lives. And some of those aren't so good. Our strong connection to the natural world is even more reason for us to recognize and reflect upon whose lands you are on or in your own regions while you're carrying out your atlasing. Okay, I'm going to get going by sharing my screen. So give me a second here while I get the presentation up and running. Too many screens here. Share. Okay, I think we're ready to go. Perfect. Okay. So, yeah, as I said, we're going to be talking about point counts tonight. So let's just get into it. And the presentation's about half an hour or so. So what are we going to cover? We're going to cover a whole bunch of things. What's a point count? We're going to cover different types of point counts, like traditional point counts, time and distance interval point counts, and digital point counts. And then we're going to talk about some of the things you need to consider when you're doing digital point counts, like the Zoom log, and then some additional resources we have. And then at the end of the presentation, we've actually got a few reminders for you, not necessarily focused on the point count side of things. So, point counts in a nutshell essentially involve standing at a predetermined location and counting all the birds you see or hear during a set period of time. In the Atlas, that's 5 minutes, and it's done during peak breeding season, and it's done in the first 5 hours of the day, basically. We do that at that particular time of day and time of the season to make sure that this is when birds are most active and singing or calling most frequently, so we're most likely to detect them. They are very important because they allow us to quantify how populations are changing over time, how relative abundance varies across the landscape, as well as, in some cases, the actual population sizes of some species. The Atlas 3 is the second atlas in Ontario that has had point counts conducted. In Atlas 2, this was the first atlas in North America to use point counts. And we conducted an amazing 68,000 point counts during Atlas 2. We're almost at that number already in Atlas 3, so we're going to surpass that. Um, as a result of having those point counts conducted, we were able to create these detailed relative abundance maps for most species. Some species that are poorly documented with point counts, we weren't able to do this, but these are a few of the maps that were created that show relative abundance across the landscape in Ontario using point count data. So not just telling us where they are, but sort of how many there are in different parts of the province, which really gives us a whole nother view of what's happening with birds and what their associations are with different habitats and landscapes. So just as a reminder about the atlas's coverage goals, we divide the province into those 10 by 10 kilometer atlas squares. And each of those squares falls in one of our 47 administrative regions that has a team or a single regional coordinator helping coordinate effort in that area. We use these squares as a way to measure our coverage. And so that's our way to make sure we get adequate coverage that's spread out. What we don't want in the atlas is everybody to go to, Point Pelee or Long Point or Tommy Thompson Park or a place like that. And we just get tons and tons of data from one location, but we're missing information from all the other areas. So we use these squares to ensure that we get coverage that's spread out across the province. Now, when we say we want to get adequate coverage, what do we mean? We mean we want to get 20 hours of effort during the peak breeding season. So that's May 24th to July 10th in Southern Ontario, and then June 1st to July 10th in Northern Ontario. So we want 20 hours of effort, and we want 25 of these point counts to be conducted per square. And if possible, we want 5 of those point counts to be conducted away from roads in certain habitat types. So in Southern Ontario, that's the dark green area on the map on the right. We want to have 100% of our squares covered with this amount of effort. So it's a pretty ambitious goal for sure. But we think we can get pretty close to that goal, if not complete it. As we move north in the province, that middle shade of green, that sort of light green, that sort of covers Northern Ontario up to the edge of the continuous road network. In that part of the province, we're aiming to get 5% of our squares with adequate coverage. Okay, so 20 hours of effort, 25 point counts. And then in the furthest north part of the province, the places that's sort of beyond the major road network, we're aiming for 2% of all squares to have adequate coverage. So there are some optional surveys. We're not going to talk about them really tonight, but these are surveys that are optional in all squares as well. And these are targeting with very specific protocols to target hard to detect species like owls, nightjars, and marsh birds. So let's focus in on the point counts, though, for the purpose of this evening's presentation. Where do you conduct point counts? Well, the first thing we want you to think about is checking the coverage map. So we've got a great video that shows you how to use the coverage map on our YouTube channel. So we encourage you to check that out. But on the coverage map, you can select different metrics. So one of the metrics you can select is point counts. And that's the map that you're seeing in the top right there. Each square is shaded with a shade of blue, depending on how many point counts have been completed. So we want you to check this out so that you can see, okay, this square has already had 25 or more point counts. It does not need any more. Or maybe that square has almost no point counts and it needs quite a few. So you can look for available squares near you or near areas that you might be traveling to that need point counts. And then what we want you to do is contact your regional coordinator. You can also skip that first step, but you'll save your regional coordinator a lot of time if you come to them with a suggestion that, hey, I see this square could use some point counts. Would you like some help? We want you to let them know that you're interested because we don't want two people to go out and do the point counts in the same square when we could have had those two people spread out and covering off 2 squares instead. We want to avoid that duplication. Now, within a square, we have our Atlas Square maps. You can find these under Atlas Square resources on the website. And these square maps show you where there's the predefined point counts. These are the roadside point counts that are numbered with little crosses. And so there should be about 40 of these. These are basically randomly selected. Some of them are previous locations where Atlas 2 point counts were conducted, but these are for the most part randomly selected along roads within the square. There should be about 40 of them. And so we want you to select the first 20 of those um, to be conducted that are safe and accessible. There's also some off-road point counts, perhaps, on that square map. Those are shown with a red dot and then a red letter. These are off-road point count locations that were conducted during Atlas 2, so we want to try to get those repeated if possible. The number of off-road point counts, that's the part that's circled on the square map down in the bottom here. That tells you how we want those off-road point counts. We want to get 5, remember, in each square if possible. It'll tell you the breakdown of major habitat types where we want to have those conducted. So in this particular square, our goal is to have 4 off-road point count stations completed in broadleaf forest and 1 in mixed forest. So some of those A and B might already be satisfying some of that. And if they are, great. You can cross those off, and then you just need to find a few more to meet that off-road point count goal. Now, some squares in Southern Ontario, it's not possible to get 5 off-road stations completed. Maybe because there's just all private property and you're not able to get permission to get into some of those forests. Some squares, there's just not enough forested habitat to even get these 5 point counts completed. That's okay. If you can't complete those 5 off-road, we still want to try to aim to get 25 point counts in the square, so you can add a couple more roadside stations to get completed up to the 25. Okay, so we mentioned this in the kind of outline of what we're going to cover. We have 3 main types of point counts that can be completed. So we have standard point counts, advanced point counts, and digital point counts. Standard point counts are 5 minutes, and we divide those 5 minutes into 2 time bands. So minutes 1 to 3 and minutes 4 to 5. And that's the same for all 3 of these point count protocols. And in this point count, we were going to record all the birds seen or heard, and this requires pretty advanced bird identification skills. So you really should be able to identify basically everything you see or hear in that part of the province. So that's fine if that's not something that you're capable of doing or comfortable doing. Then digital point counts might be something you're interested in helping with. We'll get to that in a second. The advanced point counts basically build upon the standard point counts. And instead of just having the 2 time bands, now we also add in 3 distance bands. And this will make a lot more sense when we start explaining the protocol in a little more detail. But otherwise, it's basically the same as standard point counts with the added, we want to not only know what time band the birds were in, but what distance band they were in from the observer. Now, the third type of point count are these digital point counts. So again, 5 minutes divided into 2 time bands. And this time, instead of you doing all the identification yourself, you use a digital recorder to record the 5-minute point count. And then that recording is sent to experts that are going to interpret the recording and identify all the birds they can hear on that recording over the course of the winter. So this is a perfect option for new birders or people that just aren't quite comfortable with their sound ID yet. Okay, so what we're going to do the rest of this presentation is we're going to go through each type of point count in a little more detail, talk about what it entails and how to collect the data, some of the different options for collecting the data. So let's start with standard point counts and how you collect the data with the app. So with the app, it's super simple. When you start your standard point count checklist, you'll select the location where you are, the date and time, all that stuff gets filled in. And then what's even handier is in the top left of the app, there's a timer that starts for you. So you don't even need to keep track of what time, how long you've been there. It'll keep track of it for you. So you've got 2 columns of data with the species. You've got your first time interval, minutes 1 to 3, and then you've got the second time interval, minutes 4 to 5. So all you need to do is record how many individuals you had in each time interval. So in the 4 to 5 time interval, you're only going to add new individuals. So if you had 2 chickadees in the first 3 minutes and then 3 more chickadees showed up, in the second time interval, then you'd add 3 in that second column. But if it's the same two that are present for the entire 5 minutes, you only put it in the time interval where you first found those two individuals. So very straightforward. If you want to add details or breeding evidence codes, you just tap on the species name to access the details or the breeding evidence box. Now, one thing to keep in mind, this works great when you're working offline. So if you don't have a data connection, maybe you're in somewhere with poor cell service, it works just fine. You obviously can't submit it until you get back home or somewhere with a data connection. So you can save it as a draft. Just make sure if you do save it as draft, make sure you get right to the end of the checklist where it asks you, was the station completed on the roadside? A lot of people forget to get that far. They save the draft and then they go to submit it later on and they never fill that question in. Now, if you're recording standard point counts in a notebook, and some people they can't stand looking at their phone while they're trying to look at birds, so they like to use their notepad and then enter it through Nature Counts website. That's totally fine. What we recommend is putting all your details like the point count station ID, the square ID, and the station ID up at the top, along with the date and time. And then we suggest you add 3 columns here. So one for the time interval 1 to 3, one for the second time interval 4 to 5, and then a breeding evidence column. And then you can just tally things off, just like you did in the app, but instead you're writing things down in the notebook. Now, if you did that in your notebook, you'll have to go on through the website to enter the data. So keep in mind that the web data entry on Nature Counts website is optimized for entering multiple point counts at once. So the assumption is you went out and you did several point counts in a morning. So that's how the data entry is set up. So you can start a general atlasing checklist on the website, choose a route or select an entire square that you covered, and then make sure you check off the did you complete atlas point counts during this survey option. Once you've done that, you hit continue, and you'll get to a spot where you select your point count stations. So once you select your point count stations, the map will pop up so you can pick the ones you did. If you added any new point count stations, it'll give you a chance for you to label it, check off whether it's roadside or not, and then you'll get to the web data entry. So remember, it's optimized for an entire morning's worth. So you'll see now on the example that I'm showing here, you've got 3 columns basically, one for the point count station 11, one for the point count station 17, and one for the new point count station. And it's got the start time so you can remember which one was which. And then you just add in the data. So if you had Canada Goose on all 3 point counts, you could do it all at once. So just keep in mind that when you're entering the data on the website for standard point counts, it's really optimized for multiple point counts to be entered at once. Okay, advanced point counts, also known as the 6 interval point count format. So this is an optional way to collect point count data. It gives us a little more information when it tells us not only what time interval the birds were detected, but also how far away from the observer they were. So it does give us more information, but what we recognize that it does take more effort to collect that data. So this is totally optional. If you want to stick to standard point counts, that is no problem. We are very happy to get those standard point counts. If you are going to use the advanced point count format, then the app works great. We introduced this to Atlasers last year, and I think everybody we heard from really loved this format for collecting data. So just like in the standard point counts, when you start your checklist, the timer is going to start going in the top left. The one feature that this has that standard point counts doesn't is up in the top there. You'll see the big blue box around the number 1. That makes it really obvious that you're in time interval 1, the first time band. Once you get past 3 minutes, then it'll switch to the 2 being colored blue, so you know you're in the second time interval. Now, the great part about using this method is you don't even really have to keep track of which interval you're in. You just add the data to this map, and it'll automatically calculate what time interval you're in based on the timer. So how you do the data entry is you tap where on the map you think the bird was singing or where you saw it. and it's got those rings that show you the distance band. So you just pop on the species. So you tap, pick the species, and enter a count for that particular individual. And then it does the rest of the work for you where it calculates, okay, well, this American robin is in the first time interval and it's in the first distance band. There's one for that. And it just adds everything up for you, which is pretty great. Um, just like the standard point counts, if you're doing this offline, make sure you get to the point where it asks you an answer the question of was the station completed along the roadside first before you save it as a draft. Now, just like standard point counts, maybe you prefer to enter the data in your notebook. That's totally fine. The main difference that you're going to find is instead of having just three columns, one for time interval one for time interval two, and then the breeding evidence, now you're going to have six intervals plus the breeding evidence. That's where the six interval name comes from. You've got three different options of distance bands in the 1 to 3 minute period, and then the same three distance band options within the 4 to 5 minutes. So there's six columns of data plus the breeding evidence column. So you need to know which column to put the data in. A lot of people find it much easier to collect this sort of data using that sort of diagram on the bottom where you have the circles to show you and visualize where it was that you heard or saw something. They find it a lot easier to keep track of where the birds were. So that's totally good. We have those for download under our forms on the Atlas website. And then you'd have to come back later to calculate sort of the totals from each time and distance band to get the data ready to be entered through the website. Now, for the web data entry for the six interval point counts, you need to select the protocol as Atlas point count six interval, and then select your location. And then what you'll get is something like we showed you in that notebook where you have six columns of data, the three distance bands with each of the two time bands, and then a breeding evidence column. There's also a spot for comments here as well. So once you've got your data collected, it's pretty quick to enter these. These, unlike the standard point counts, these are meant to be entered one station at a time. It's just so many columns of data that it's a lot easier if you only worrying about one particular point count at a time. Okay, I'm going to turn things over to Kaylin, and she's going to talk about digital point counts.
Awesome. Okay, so digital point counts are something that's brand new for Atlas 3. So Mike was saying that in Atlas 2, there were over 60,000 point counts completed, but they were only kind of those standard point counts. So our six intervals and our digital point counts are new for this Atlas, which is very exciting. New technology like the app and these digital point counts are really enabling a lot more folks to get involved with the Atlas, which I personally think is really great. So digital point counts, as Mike said earlier, are, where you set up this Zoom H2N unit, typically on a tripod. If it's roadside or kind of, we have these gorilla tripods that you can use for off-road point counts. You can attach to tree branches or other things off-road. So digital point counts are great for atlasers who are uncomfortable with bird ID by sound, and they can use a Zoom H2N recorder for point counts. So this could be new birders, folks who are not quite confident with their bird ID yet, or potentially folks that feel like they can't hear the variety of bird song that's out there and feel more comfortable using a Zoom recorder for their point counts as well. So the methodology for the digital point counts mirrors traditional point counts or those standard point counts. So the recordings replace the in the field identification. So you essentially set up the Zoom recorder for those 5 minutes and let it record. And then that data is uploaded by the atlasers, interpreted by bird experts, and then integrated into the atlasers Nature Counts account. And so if you have your Nature Counts account, you can go in and see what was found on each one of those digital point counts, which is kind of fun. Next slide. Okay, so of course, when we go to do these digital point counts, we have to give some sort of information as to, where the digital point count is taking place and when, as well as who is conducting the digital point count. So what we want to say when we set up those Zoom units is our full name, the date and time, the location, and then start and stop so that you know when the 5 minutes is starting and stopping. So for predefined stations, these can be on or off-road stations and are noted by numbers or letters on the map. So the red arrows pointing to A and to 22. We can say the square number, the point number, and of course our name, date, and time. So for example, I could say the Kalen Boom Ellis at May 24th, 2025 at 7:26 a.m. Square 17 TPL 22.22 or point A, depending on which red arrow I'm at there. For new stations, we don't have coordinates for where you decide to do an off-road point count or a new roadside point count. So what you'll have to do is say the square number and then the latitude and longitude. And so that will just help us figure out where you've done your point counts and when you've done them. So next slide. In addition to this, we also ask for digital point counters to fill out a Zoom log. And so what a Zoom log is it's just essentially that metadata that you say at the start of the recording, but in an Excel format so that we can match those recordings with what you're saying in case, it's really early in the morning and you forget your name, which can happen, or forget, what time it is or what square you're in. Those early mornings can really catch up to you. So this is just kind of a fail-safe to make sure that we have all the information we need to connect those recordings to the time, place, and person who recorded them. So it's essentially to simplify the data transfer from wild tracks to nature counts. And we just ask you maintain a log in your notebook typically, but you can record it however makes most sense to you with all of the information that's kind of in that table below. You can either print a Zoom log. So we have an example Zoom log on the website. You can either print that or record the metadata directly in your notebook to facilitate the completion of the spreadsheet later on. Next slide. So, once you've done all of your digital point counts, you've completed your digital point count log, you can download your audio data from the Zoom unit onto your computer and then upload it to FileZilla or reach out to the Atlas office if you're having trouble with this step. So there is a YouTube video on how to transfer your data from your computer to FileZilla, but please reach out to us. We're more than happy to either help you or to set up a Google Drive or some other way for you to transfer us the information. And then email the Atlas to let us know your files are uploaded and to send us your Zoom log. Next slide. Okay, so that's a lot of information. There's a lot of steps here. It's not as easy as just going out and using the Nature Counts app and recording the birds you're seeing and hearing. And so I've kind of tried to summarize it here. So step one would be talk to your regional coordinator and plan out your point count survey stations. So you want to make sure you talk to your regional coordinator so that we're not duplicating point count effort. Nothing worse than two people going in the same square and doing the same points. Step two, in the field, conduct your 5-minute point count survey with the recording device and make sure to keep a log of each point count as you go. Once you get home, please let your regional coordinator and Atlas staff know you've completed your point counts as soon as possible. So even if you don't have the files uploaded yet or your log completed, please let us know that the point counts are done. The main reason for this step being added for this year is because it's our final year. So if you're waiting to finish your Zoom log and to get everything kind of completed, then we might not know that those point counts are done because they don't show up on the coverage map. So we might think that we have gaps that we don't actually have in our survey coverage. Next, you'll want to fill in your Zoom log. Based on your notes, you'll want to upload your audio files to FileZilla or send them to Mike and I, and then send us the Zoom log and you're done. Next slide. So we do have additional resources if you're not really sure how to proceed. The biggest resource, of course, is the Atlas website, which is birdsontario.org. Under the tools and resources, we do have point count surveys. So either under instructions and forms or under special surveys and point counts, you can get to point count information both ways. There's also that mapping resources to get to some resources that pertain to point counts that we'll talk about a little bit later, probably in the Q&A. Next slide. So from that website, under the point counts, there is a digital point count survey cheat sheet. So this talks about the equipment, what settings you want to have everything on, what you want to say, and when to or not to survey, depending on kind of the weather and wind speed, all of those sorts of things. So make sure to check out the birdsontario.org website, not even just for digital point counts, but also for information on traditional point counts as well. Next slide. We also have our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/@onbirdatlas, which is written at the top right there. We have that video that Mike talked about earlier, which is, navigating the coverage map. There's also a lot of videos on how to conduct point counts, traditional point counts, so standard or 6 interval point counts, as well as digital point counts for both on-road and off-road. So there's lots of really, really great resources there if you just check out our YouTube channel. Next slide. Okay, so that's it in terms of point counts. We're going to be doing some Q&A, so make sure if you have a question, either put it in the Q&A on Zoom or put it in the comments on Facebook. But we do have some announcements and reminders. So as I mentioned, it's our last year of data collection, and peak season for Southern Ontario starts this Saturday. So make sure you're checking out the coverage map. Make sure, if you've committed to complete atlasing, you know whether you can complete it or not. If you have committed to complete atlasing, but something comes up, or you know now that you might not be able to complete it for some reason, please tell your regional coordinator as soon as possible. We totally understand that these things happen. So we just want to make sure that we have those areas covered. And along the same vein, we're starting a Bird Emergency Atlas Survey Team, or BEAST, for folks that are not able to complete their atlasing. About halfway through the season, we're going to do a bit of a pulse check to see where we're at and then where the gaps are. And that's where the Bird Emergency Atlas Survey Team is going to come in. So we're hoping to gather a team of folks who are willing to do some last minute atlasing, could be point counts, could be general atlasing, to fill some of those gaps midway through the season. So if you're interested in signing up for something like that, please sign up through our Google form, which I think Mike is going to post in the chat if he has the link. It's
I
just
can't
the,
while I'm sharing the
oh,
screen.
okay. No
Unfortunately.
worries. That's okay. I actually have it, so I'm going to post it in the chat. Um, okay, excellent. So I've just posted the link in the chat, both on Zoom and on Facebook here, for the sign-up sheet for the Bird Emergency Atlas Survey Team. So if you can help out midway through the season, you have the time to get into some of those gaps, please sign up. Another announcement, our square bashes are starting this Friday with our Gray Bruce Square Bash from the 23rd until the 28th. And then we have our Silent Lake Square Bash from the 30th to the 4th. We have Bonachere from the 6th to the 11th. And then new Rondo Square Bash starting on June 12th and going until June 16th. That's right, Mike. Great. Yeah, excellent. So keep your eyes peeled for sign up for that. I don't think we have it up quite yet, or do we have a sign up sheet already? Okay, don't listen to me. We have a sign up sheet already for the Rondo Square Bash, so I will also be posting that in the chat. And keep an eye on the newsletter, which is coming out tomorrow, and on our social media for that sign up as well. If you don't follow the link when I post it here. Backcountry
It's,
trips. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
it's available on the Square Bash's website. So
Excellent.
you can get all the registration for all four of those Square Bashes on the Square Bash's website on the Get Involved tab of our website.
Great. And I have that here too. So I can post that again in the chat.
Thank you.
No worries. And then backcountry trips. Maybe Mike, you want to take on the backcountry trips? You've been a little
Sure.
more involved
Yeah.
in them.
So we have a few backcountry trips still in kind of central Ontario from kind of Temagami down to Queen Elizabeth II Wildlands Provincial Park, which is basically around Aurelia. And so those are backcountry trips. Most of them are just like a weekend long, like a 1 or 2 night trip. Most of them are canoe trips. There's a couple hiking ones though as well. And these just get to places where there's not good road access to those squares. So we don't think we're going to be able to get them done unless somebody's willing to go spend a weekend or a night midweek getting into these backcountry areas. So if you are somebody who likes backcountry camping and wants an excuse to go in the next month or so to one of these areas, go to the Atlas website under Get Involved and find the backcountry trips. And we've done all the work for you in terms of telling you where you're going to start, what square you need to get into, where the camping is, what kind of time commitment we're talking about. So you can go check those out. There's some from as short as one night to ones that are like a 10-day trip. So we'd really appreciate some help with those to get some of the areas covered. I can just keep going on the next few things in the announcements. We still need photos. We had a great turnout of people submitting photos in April as part of our April monthly challenge, but we want more photos. So these are going to be used, some of them for our social media stuff, but what we really want these photos for is we currently have an Atlas photo committee, and they're going through photos that we have had submitted, and they're going through the process of picking out the photos that we want to use for the final publication. So that's going to continue this fall. But by the time we get to this point next year, it'll probably be too late to submit your photos if you want them to be included in the atlas potentially in the final product. So get your photos in through our media submission page on our website. I mentioned the April monthly challenge. We had great turnout for that. Same with our OWL survey challenge. Great turnout, people submitting data. And we had a couple pairs of binoculars that were given out as prizes. So congrats to the winners. You'll be able to see who won those in the newsletter that's coming out tomorrow. We're in the May challenge right now, which is submitting checklists via the app. I think the cutoff is 10 checklists. If you submit 10 checklists that have at least one species with a breeding evidence code added, then you'll be included in the draw at the end of the month to win a pair of Vortex binoculars. So get those checklists in. This is a great time of year to be atlasing, even though we're a few days away from peak period still. It's a great time of year to add breeding evidence, especially for those early season breeders. So that's the May challenge. And then in June and July, we have a monthly challenge each month. They're the same challenge each month though. And for that one, you get entered every time you upgrade breeding evidence. So that could be from no breeding evidence to possible. It could be from a possible code to a probable code, etc. So if you go to places that are under Atlas, you'll have a better chance of finding upgraded breeding evidence, and you'll be entered more times into the contest to win again pair of binoculars each month of June and July. So keep an eye out for that. We always post those on social media, but they're also on our Atlas Challenges page on the website. And then we wanted to also let you know that there's a new feature available in the Nature Counts app, which is offline maps. And this is a cool feature for those of you who do atlasing in areas with poor cell service, or maybe you don't use a data plan. What you can do when you have a data connection, you go into your app settings and there's a little thing called offline maps. And in that offline maps, you can pick an area and then you can have the app download those maps. So all the imagery that you see in the background when you're selecting your location or you're adding pins, it saves that imagery to the phone. And then when you go to use your app, even though you don't have a data connection, you'll have that background imagery saved and available for use. It'll be as though you had a data connection other than submitting the data. So very handy feature. And there's a video that we made that shows how to use that feature on our Atlas tutorials playlist on our YouTube channel. I think that's it for as far as announcements go. So I'm gonna jump ahead to our addresses. So if you want to learn more, don't forget the Atlas website. It's birdsontario.org. Our email is atlas@birdsontario.org. That is monitored by Kaylin and I, and we are getting very, very busy right now. So our apologies in advance if you send us an email and we don't reply to you right away. We'll do our best. If you have just general atlasing questions, I highly recommend you go to our discussion forum on the website. That takes you to our Discord server, and you can ask questions there. It's a little easier for us to answer questions there, but also we really like if you ask questions there because there's a whole bunch of other really knowledgeable atlasers that often beat us to the punch and answer the question before we can get there. So you will be more likely to get a quick answer if you head to the discussion forum. And you can, of course, follow us on all of our social media channels and check out all of our tutorials and other videos like past Sappy hours on our Atlas YouTube channel. Okay, 7:40. So I'm going to stop sharing so that I can see the rest of the screens. And then if we have any questions, we can answer them. Kaylin has been hard at work putting in links.
Yeah, definitely. I'm actually just going to get us started off with a question here. So for squares that have some point counts, but not all completed, how do you know where they've already been done so you don't duplicate effort?
Aha, good question. So we have there's a couple ways. Um, so I think I'm going to show how to do this because that'll make way more sense than me trying to explain it. Let me pull up the Atlas website. I'm going to share my screen again. Should have just kept sharing. Okay, so we're on the Atlas website. I find that I'm going to show you the way I do it. There's a second way that I'll show you as well. So the way I do it is I go to Tools and Resources, Mapping Resources, and then go to Square Resources. So a lot of resources. So go to the Square Resources page, and this will get you to a spot where you can zoom in on the square you're interested in. So let's say we're interested in the square that Silent Lake Provincial Park is in. We're going there in a couple weeks. So let's zoom in the map on Silent Lake. There's Silent Lake. Okay. So here's the square. And in this case, it's not a square, it's a rectangle because happens to sit on one of those edges of the UTM zone. So when you zoom in, once you zoom in enough, it'll show you the square boundary. It'll tell you what square you're talking about. So we're talking about square 17 TQK 37. It shows you the predefined point count stations. They're all labeled with pins. Some of them are letters. Those are the off-road stations, as you recall, and some of them are numbers. Those are the roadside. Now, what you're noticing right away is some of them are green, some of them are blue. So the green ones are the ones that have been completed. The blue ones have not. So it looks like we got all the point counts done basically down along the southern edge of the park and then along the north part of the park, but there must be a road that kind of goes through here that we didn't get any point counts completed. So that's how I do it. Um, I like to look at things visually like this, so it gives me a good picture that, okay, that's the area that doesn't have the point counts done. If we go to the square summary sheet, you can access it here. You can access the Square Summary Sheet through the coverage map as well. I'm going to click Use Square Summary Sheet. That'll open that up. And here it will list which ones are completed. So predefined completed. I'm highlighting here. It's probably very tiny text on people's screens, so I'm going to zoom in. This tells me point count station 9, 10, 13, 14, 16, 18, etc. These are the ones that have been completed. And so anything else that's not listed there has not been completed. That's how I do it. I don't know, Kaylin, do you have any other secret way that I don't know about?
No, that's usually the way I do it too. Sometimes if you download the CamZ and make like a Google map, it also shows which ones are completed if it colors them
Right.
red. And so that kind of ties into another question that we have here, which is how do you navigate to the points?
How do you navigate to the points? Okay. Well, there's a few different ways. Again, we definitely designed this atlas and some of the tools in a way that you can kind of choose whichever way works best for you. So the way I do it might not be the way you choose to do it. The way I do it, I like to use the PDF maps that we have for each square. So again, we're going to use the square resources page, and I'm going to use this example, this square. So the first option that'll pop up is download the PDF map for that square. So if I click that, it will open up the PDF map. Now, this tells me, shows me the point count stations. Uh, it tells me the coordinates as well. But what's really cool about this PDF map is in the background of this map, it has all the geographic information to tell you where you are on that map. You just need to open it in a way that knows how to do that. So there's a really cool app called Avenza Maps that works on iPhone and on Android. I have that. I use it all the time. And so I actually bring this PDF map into Avenza Maps, and then I can see where I am on this map. So I would show up like as a little blue dot wherever I was in this map. It works without data connection, so you can be in the middle of the Hudson Bay Lowlands. As long as you've downloaded this map ahead of time, you can use that to navigate while you're offline. That's the main way I navigate. There's lots of other options though. If we're back here on the Square Resources page, you can download the point count coordinates in a CSV format or GPX format. So those two formats work great. You can bring them into like um, your GPS unit, depending on the GPS unit you have, and then so you can have those right in a handheld GPS unit or one of those car mount GPS units. The other way that I do things often is I download the point count coordinates in the Google Earth format. You can open those in Google Earth, but you can also make yourself your own Google map. And that's handy because then you can use the Google tools to navigate from one place to the next. So that takes a few more steps. I'm not going to show you how to do that right now, but we have a video up on our tutorials page that shows you how to use Avenza Maps, and we have one that shows you how to make a Google map using the Google Earth format. So those are the main ways I do it. If I know I'm going to spend a lot of time in a square, I would take the effort to make a Google map, but I use the Avenza Maps quite often as well.
Great. Okay. And
Well, hang on.
oh,
I want to
sorry.
know. I want to know what you use,
What
Kaylin.
I use, I do the same sort of thing. I do actually have, I might steal this share screen from you. I think I could probably replace your share here with mine. Um, I do the same sort of thing. I use Google Maps quite often, and I especially use them for the square bashes. So this is one of the Google Maps that I've made for the Bruce Gray square bash. The squares that don't have numbers here, this is how the Google Map typically imports. The red dots are point counts that have been completed. So when you import them, it'll show which ones have been completed. And then the numbered ones are ones that don't have any completed because I just think it's easier to look at this way. And so this is just kind of a sequence of numbers. So I do make the Google Maps, but I also use Avenza Maps for when I'm navigating within a square. I think it's a lot easier for when you're doing off-road point counts because Avenza Maps, you can measure distances. So if you're doing an off-road point count, you can see how far it is from the road. You can see how far it is from another point count, which I think is a lot easier to use. So I use a combination of quite a few things. And then the Nature Counts app, if you select point counts and then edit location, it'll show you all of the point count stations that are on the map as well. So I use a little bit of everything, but there's lots of options for whatever method works best for the user.
Nice.
Yeah, I already had that one ready to go from earlier. Okay. For predefined off-road point counts, what if they're on private property?
Yeah, if they're on private property, then you need to get permission before you go on there. So that can be pretty tricky. So you might not even know, maybe you see a sign that says it's private property, and so you know it's private property, but you might have no idea who owns it. So it's really we want you to do what you're comfortable doing. So if you're comfortable going and knocking on houses and asking people, "Hey, do you know who owns this property?" Oh, great, it's you. You can explain what you're doing. In our experience, if you explain what you're doing, the vast majority of time people are like, "Oh yeah, no problem. You're going to count birds. That's great. Hey, maybe you can tell me what you found afterwards," kind of thing. But that's not everybody's cup of tea. So, I mean, if you can get permission, great. But the number one thing is do not go on private property without getting permission to do so. And do what you're comfortable with. If you can't or don't want to get that permission, then you can just skip that and move on and see if you can find a new spot that is on public property or a place that you know you can get access to.
I will just add that during Atlas 2, those off-road point counts were kind of done ad hoc for folks that could get into off-road locations. So not all of the off-road point counts will be the predefined off-road point counts will be in the right habitat per se. And so we do want folks to prioritize getting those five off-road point counts in the correct habitat before they get them in those kind of repeated stations. So just kind of a note on that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and kind of to that, those predefined off-road ones, those are done 20 years ago. And so who knows what maybe it was not private property 20 years ago, or maybe it was the person who was doing them's property and it's been sold, or it was somebody who had let every birder come by and stop on their property 20 years ago, and now it's been sold as well. So like things have definitely could have changed in the 20 years since last Atlas. So it's not a safe assumption to assume that just because there was one done there 20 years ago means we have permission to go on there again. So make sure you've got that permission.
Okay, excellent. Next one is how do you report visual sightings during a digital point count?
So there's a couple options. I mean, you do not have to. Um, the main thing is to get the recording done. So that's fine. You can just ignore that if you want. You can do a paired point count with it and conduct like an in-person point count or a general atlasing checklist while you're doing that digital point count, and report everything you can identify or just certain things. But if you do just certain things, then make sure you answer no to that. Are you submitting a complete checklist? Oh, you're muted there, Kaylin.
Great. Thanks. Okay, last one. If you're adding a new point count, or new point counts, how far apart do they need to be?
Oh, that is a good question. I am drawing a blank.
I have it. It's
You've
okay.
got it handy there?
Yeah,
I'm gonna
yeah.
have to quick
So
look it up.
if it's an off-road point count, it needs to be 300 meters from the nearest point count. And if it's a roadside, then it needs to be 500 meters from the nearest point count. So you can add new roadside point counts. These, especially in places where the roads are not the same as they used to be, or there's new roads that weren't accounted for in the road layers, you can add new roadside point counts. They have to be 500 meters apart. And then the off-roads are 300.
Perfect.
And that's it. That was the last
Ah,
one.
okay. Okay. Well, we can let people go early. We'll give another 5 seconds. Get your questions in. All right. And the meeting is being recorded, so we'll have this up on our YouTube channel. Not right away, but as soon as we can. So if you missed something, you can go back and watch it again. But thanks everybody for joining. Uh, Good luck with the peak season approaching. We can't wait to see all your data coming in.
Great. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great night. Bye.